Just kidding. Sort of. With Paul, Jeremy, and April on this episode of Evangelicalish.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Evangelicalish. I'm April.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Paul.
We did not rehearse that as usual, but we are glad to be here. Got a new intro going on. So very fresh. We didn't have video
I
ready.
think my voice cracked on there or something.
It did a little bit. It's pretty cute, actually. It's like, ish.
Like Peter Brady.
Oh, don't play balls in the house. Was that
That's
pretty
right.
much? Anyway. Yeah, so we're here with Evangelicalish. We've got a great show planned. We don't really have a ton of housekeeping. Join our ish group, evangelicalish.com. We will be here again next week. We've had a 2-week break. We had a really awesome time meeting with our private ish community on Zoom a couple weeks ago, and we took last week off. And so now we're back and we are excited. There's a lot going on in the world, but we are here and we are continuing to press on. And Trump was not arrested.
Yet.
Sadly. So far.
Shockingly, he lied.
What a shock. I know.
Yeah, he can't even like tell the truth about being indicted and arrested. That's a whole nother level.
But he did give a lot of people the opportunity to compare him to Jesus once again. I don't know if y'all saw that.
I did.
Oh, were they like, oh man, he's going to be like, I wonder who Barabbas would be.
DeSantis.
Oh gosh.
Give us
No.
DeSantis. Give us DeSantis. No, don't give us DeSantis.
What was the thing was they were saying both Jesus and Trump arrested around Easter time.
He was saying if
No,
Trump's
they
going to be
did
arrested on
not.
Tuesday, which is right in the middle of Lent, and just like Jesus rose from the grave in 3 days, Trump will be vindicated and something stupid like that. So, it's good to know though that they're still viewing him, some of them, as a Messiah type,
Yeah, I think he's itching to get arrested. I think he thinks that this will get me the presidency. Arrest me for Stormy Daniels, and I'll win president. I'll win president.
Yeah, I think he learned from the first time around that the martyr thing works for him. Like after the whole Hollywood Access tape deal in 2016. And then he was able to spin that like, see, they're just trying to persecute me. It was just locker room talk, or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that phrase. I hope to never hear it again. But yeah, I think he thinks that it would be good for poll numbers.
Yeah.
And the way we've seen Christians react these recent years, he's probably right.
He's not wrong. Yeah,
Well, they love persecution. So
They do.
When he said I could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose any voters, he was dead on right. He was not lying.
So, like the
at
only
that
true
point.
thing he said, pretty much.
Listen, I am not one by any stretch of the imagination to kink shame. You do you, but Christians and their persecution, that's a pretty bad kink for me.
Yeah,
I always tell him you're not persecuted. This is just how people respond to assholes.
That's exactly right.
accountability.
Yeah, it's accountability.
It's not persecution. Okay, so we could obviously talk about this forever, but we have got a really awesome guest tonight. So,
Yes, we
Paul, who do we have?
We have Brian McLaren, and this is exciting because this is one of the titan theologians of our space these days. Author, speaker, activist, public theologian, former college English teacher, says his bio, and former pastor and a passionate advocate for a new kind of Christianity that is just generous, just, and working with people of all faiths for the common good. He's a core faculty member of the Living School and podcaster with Learning How to See, which are part of the Center for Action and Contemplation. And he's also an Auburn Senior Fellow and co-host of Southern Lights. His 2 newest books are Faith After Doubt and what we'll spend time talking about today. And I think what a lot of us have been talking about in this time is, do I stay Christian? Brian McLaren is with us. Brian, thanks for joining us.
I'm really happy to be with you guys. I'm your fan. So Happy to be with you.
Oh, we are your fan. You bigger fan.
I'm not blushing. You're blushing. Well, very cool. So the new book is Do I Stay Christian? And for people who know you, you've been writing books that have been important in the emergent church movement and kind of the different things that have people have been questioning evangelicalism in America for a long time. How did you come to write a book called Do I Stay Christian?
Well, I grew up evangelicalish in the sense that I grew up on the very right wing fringe of evangelical. So I grew up, really in a fundamentalist setting. Super sweet parents and many wonderful people, but I was pretty sure I was on my way out from like the age of 8 or 9 or 10. I liked science, and I read books about dinosaurs and fossils and the Big Bang and things like that. And I learned in Sunday school that we were not allowed to believe in evolution. And so I thought, okay, when I was 10 years old, I thought 8 years from now, I'll be old enough to be out of here. So I think I was sort of uneasy with religious identity from a young age. Never would have guessed I would grow up, and I was a pastor for 24 years. Never would have guessed that would happen. But the church that I pastored, I would say, people used to say, some people are on their way into Christianity and some people are on their way out of Christianity, and they kind of meet in the foyer of the church. So.
Yeah, that's really good. When you say fundamentalist, was and you don't have to share this if you don't want to, but was it kind of IFB related, or what fundamentalist space?
It was called Plymouth Brethren. And in fact, many people have never heard of the Plymouth Brethren, but if you've heard of the rapture or dispensationalism, that was two of the worst ideas in Christian history came from my little sect.
Their finest works.
Yeah.
That's a trophy. They've scared generations,
millions of
evangelical kids.
They punched above their weight in damage to impressionable children with those doctrines.
I've been there, coming home, and the TV was on and the door wasn't locked, and it's like, oh no, I'm gonna have to get 666 tattooed on my forehead.
No. When I was left behind, it was, no, I'm gonna have to get my head chopped off.
Yes,
I'm gonna refuse to get 666 and like second myself up that a guillotine death wouldn't be that bad.
Yes. As a 10-year-old, you're like, I can do it.
And people are so surprised when they hear that no one in the history of Christianity ever thought of the rapture before 1835, so.
Oh, you mean Paul didn't think about it in Thessalonians?
Yeah.
So you break the book out in sections. No, yes. So this is not would you say this is not an anti-Christian book? Is it a deconstructing book? Because you're giving the reasons to leave and the reasons to stay. How would you characterize it?
Yeah, it's funny. You spend a couple years writing a book, and then it comes out, and then you spend a year talking about it nonstop, and you think of all the things you should have said when you wrote the book. I think about a year or 8 or 10 months after the book came out, I realized what I really was trying to say is I don't think anyone should say yes to Christianity without also saying no. And I don't think anybody should say no without also being open to some dimensions of it they should say yes to. So in some ways, I was motivated to structure the book that way for a couple of reasons. One is that I think an awful lot of people would pick up a book like this and they would think, oh, he's going to tell us why we have to stay, whether we want to or not, or why we ought to stay, whether we ought to or not, or why it would be dishonest or against the evidence, or, people have heard so much of that kind of manipulative talk. And so I had to show that I take seriously the reasons for leaving. And I think they're very serious and weighty reasons. not to stay. And then I give some reasons in the second part of the book to stay. And then in the third part of the book, I say, look, some of us are going to stay, some of us aren't, but we have to wake up the next morning and figure out how we're going to live. Maybe that's the more important question. How are we going to live? I should also say, Paul, that I'm really worried. I'm honestly worried that the worst things that Christianity has ever done maybe are about to be done. In other words, I think the Christian religion has some pretty ugly chapters in its history, and I don't think they have been faced, and certainly haven't been grappled with moral seriousness. And so I hope the book will encourage the people who stay to have that kind of moral seriousness.
I found it so just validating, because I read the no part, and when I first picked it up, I was like, I cannot stay Christian. That word is tainted.
Yeah.
And then reading the no section, I was just like, the burning anger inside of me was just like, yes, no, of course. Yes, this is answering my question. And then you get to the yes part, and it's like, oh yeah. Well, no, yes, I agree with that. And I do have this spiritual sense about myself that I also don't want to deny, but it's like, do I need to stay Christian to like fully to still have that? And I love just the nuance that you bring to the topic, because I think for a lot of us, like in evangelical faith, if you're in the evangelical church, it's very fundamentalist. It's very black and white. There's not a lot of nuance. It's either good or evil. And I think a lot of people, including myself, like as we deconstruct and like try to, detox the more harmful parts of our faith, we can like get rid of the theology, but we can keep the like the dogmatic fundamentalism, but just be the other side of it, oh no, all Christians are bad, all churches are evil. And it's like, I'm constantly have to remind myself, like, no, like there's a lot of nuance here. These aren't just like purely evil people. Like they can do harmful, like good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things. And it's finding that balance of appreciating, like just, it's and that's how you're not an evangelical, because you have nuance in a book, and like it's just very wise, and I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, April. I'm just thinking how much that word evangelical has changed even just during my lifetime, because I think when I was younger, there actually were evangelicals with nuance, but and I think there are one or two somewhere still, but the problem with so many of the ones who are capable of nuance is that they're just afraid to say it, because so then they sort of, their silence is just shocking to me in times like these. So they try to play it safe because they want to have influence. They don't want to lose their influence. But I think to myself, if you're not using your influence, do you really have it? So
yeah, you had it was one of your appendixes that you addressed pastors that are kind of silently deconstructing while they're pastoring evangelical churches. And I've actually had a lot of messages, like private messages from pastors who have said, like, I agree with what you're saying, and I'm stuck. Like, this is my livelihood. I have kids. I had an email a few weeks ago from someone who literally, like, they have residents on their church. Like, if he were to leave, he would lose pretty much everything. And so I think there's so many more people still in evangelical circles, but just in like living in this silent deconstructing, which is kind of soul crushing at the same time. But like, what advice would you give to them, which I know is loaded?
Well, April, first of all, one thing I'd want to say is that it's interesting how evangelicals very often feel they're the only ones who have this problem. I just spoke somewhere the other day, and this large group of Latter-day Saints Mormons were there, and they read this book, and it had a big effect on them. And they said, everything you said, we have our version of it. We're going through this too. And people would be surprised that there are many people in Catholic settings where if they were, it's not that they can't leave Catholicism. They can't leave their little brand of Catholicism because, like if they were to say they like Pope Francis, they would be in a lot of trouble with the Catholics in their circle. I live in Southwest Florida, and there's a city here that was built for kind of what some people would call Opus Dei Catholics, or very, strict Catholics. So, and then what's ironic is then you realize, and you know what, there are Muslim communities and Jewish communities and Buddhist communities. So this is not just a Christian problem. This is like a sociological reality in lots and lots of groups that are characterized by a super high value of belonging that they perpetuate, or that they strengthen by a super high risk of excommunication or being excluded. And one other feature of these groups is they tend to be authoritarian, meaning that the authority structures can't be questioned or challenged. So it is just a widespread problem. But by the way, I think we all know there are people whose families or communities or businesses have that same fundamentalism over politics.
Yeah.
It's a human problem. And in a certain sense, what I want to say to people then is, look, they're bringing God into this. You could totally leave God out of this. This has to do with people creating in groups and out groups and threatening you with being pushed into the out group. And one of the things I want to say, because I went through this, I was in the in group, right? And then I had the experience of being ushered out the door, so to speak. I thought to myself, why would I ever want to belong to a group that would treat me this way?
Yeah, I think we are, as people, are kind of programmed or addicted to monolithic groupthink, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't just want you to agree with the big picture items. We want you to agree with all the subpoints under the heading. And we have issues with the people who don't buy every single little thing under the heading. And so that's dangerous because what happens is then there's no diversity of thought. And when there's no diversity of thought, then there's really no challenge that happens. There's really no change. I was actually talking about this on Sunday. I was talking about when Jesus had, he called us to love our enemies. And he says, isn't it easy for us to greet our brother, but then to not talk to those that we don't know or that we don't like, whatever. Obviously very much a paraphrase, but I think that the thing that we experience today is also true of culture, probably since the beginning of time. And that is that process of like, if you don't think exactly like I think, do exactly what I do, act exactly how I act, then you can't be a part of the cool kids club. And that's, that's really dangerous. And so I love that. I love the idea of having diversified, nuanced thought and allowing that space too.
What I was thinking too, as you were saying that, Brian, is all religion is exclusive to a certain point, like you're saying, but there is one religious sect right now that's kind of trying to take over a country and input its exclusion into civil code by demonizing groups of people. And that happens to be us.
I thought you were going to say Iran, but I guess it's Iran and the United States. Yeah.
Yes, Iran and the United States. We have religious sect trying to take over. And so in your no part of your book, you talk about how we're not taught the history of Christianity, maybe particularly in evangelicalism, and that we were often on the wrong side of slavery, that we want to get close to political power. And you say, ultimately, the master of it all is money. So expound on that. I mean, like right now, it seems like in America, Christianity and particularly maybe evangelicalism are a particularly exclusive and maybe off the track group?
Yeah. First, one of the things that Protestants do, I'm a lifelong Protestant, is that whenever we find something bad in church history, we say, oh, that was those guys. We broke away from them. So we have this way of achieving innocence by division. And we keep narrowing our in-group to a smaller and smaller group so that we can see ourselves as pure and untouched and innocent and so on. But what's really rough for evangelicals is it's happening right now in their church right now. So that you can have people who Monday through Friday are saying vicious, racist, white supremacist, anti-Semitic things and are commenting enthusiastically and reposting things. So this is public behavior of members of their church. If they were out at a public bar getting drunk on Friday night, they'd get in some trouble. If they came into work on Thursday morning with someone other than their spouse, hanging on their arm, they would get in trouble. They're saying these things. They're writing and affirming these things, and nobody can say or do anything because it's such a significant number of people in the church that there's a kind of don't ask, don't tell policy. So it's fascinating to watch this happen. Of course, we were talking about the previous president before, but yeah, for those of us who grew up evangelical, watching this absolutely blatant double standard is heartbreaking. And of course, it wouldn't be so bad if the groups that we're part of were saying, yeah, we are a bunch of hypocrites, but they're saying, no, we're righteous and everybody else are the hypocrites. So it's just, it really is a tough place to be in. And it's very easy then to say, those stinking, judgmental, idiotic people who are so mean-spirited and vile and make such rank generalizations, and then of course, as we were saying before, we end up mirroring the behavior. So it creates an interesting opportunity for those of us who are brokenhearted by that behavior and don't want to mirror it.
Yeah, it's like people that would say, even to like the Greg Locks of the world, like, oh, well, he's just not a true Christian, or he's not a real Christian. I'm like, well, I would agree he's not following Christ and Christ's teachings, but he's a Christian. And it was like recognizing, I used to do that all the time. Like, oh yeah, no, the people that were for slavery, those Christians, they weren't real Christians. Like I would not, but I voted Republican.
Yes.
All the time. So,
and I'm for kids being caged at the border, but despite, the Bible saying, justice for the poor and the foreigner.
April, if I could say something about that, back in 2010, I wrote a book called A New Kind of Christianity. And in the research for that book, I wanted to do something I'd never done before, which was I wanted to read pro-slavery literature. As you can imagine, thank God there is not a terribly big market for that. But so you used to have to go to certain very specialized libraries, but over the last 15 or 20 years, several university presses went back and collected sermons of pro-slavery sermons and are putting them out so people can study them. So I got to read a bunch of pro-slavery literature.
Wow.
And what was just chilling to me is how you could just substitute the issue of slavery for any number of other issues. But the Bible verse, the Bible quoting was the same. The unreflective kind of you're either with us or with the terrorists kind of thinking. It was haunting how similar the rhetoric was. And then I realized what a remarkable thing. The white Protestant community in the United States and Catholic community, because Catholics were, right in this too, has never had like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission about our own history. And a whole lot of people go to seminaries, even especially you think the Southern Baptists or the Southern Methodists who are now sort of having a resurrection. But you would think they would want to go back and say, we better make sure we never make that mistake again.
Well, but you're talking about the SBC, who only in 2016 told their body churches that they should not fly the Confederate flag on their church grounds.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear they did that at least in
2016. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting, when you talk about that is I think the fascinating part is that Christianity does continue, especially American evangelicalism finds itself constantly on the wrong side of history. But the reluctancy to make right those injustices is probably even more telling than the injustices themselves. I mean, don't get me wrong, the injustices themselves are disgusting, but it's the fact that they're almost forced by society to walk away from them, but it's with great reluctancy instead of with vigor and remorse. And that's, that I think that's the hardest part for me to watch today.
Yeah, Jeremy, I feel the same way. And what I want to do is I don't want to say they were so bad. I want to say we were so bad. Like,
yes.
I don't want to push away the problems. I want to say, yeah, the religion that nurtured me, that taught me not to lie and cheat and steal, lied and cheated and stole. And the church that had me memorize the 10 Commandments, has sure broken a lot of them. And I want to say it's not our religion, and we have to be humbled by that, because the fact is, if you try to wiggle out of it with Christianity, well, you're an American, and then you find out that America has done some pretty horrible things, and you're a capitalist, and capitalism has done some really horrible things. And you can point to the good things that these groups have done. Yeah, but that doesn't erase the bad things. That's, in fact, it's very characteristic of an abuser. Somebody beats their spouse and then says, yeah, but I bought you a diamond ring. Doesn't that count for anything?
Right.
And so, this sense that we can't escape it. Eventually we realize that these are human problems. And this is part of the thing. I think that I realized after writing the book, that if we become so obsessed about Christian identity, evangelical identity, Catholic identity, Mormon identity, whatever it is, eventually it becomes like this way of keeping from ourselves that we are becoming really nasty human beings. So at the end of the day, that's what I think really matters, is what kind of human beings we are becoming.
Well, I think there's so much cover just theologically in a lot of evangelical Christian, even probably Mormon churches, is that we're taught like, oh, you're saved by grace.
Yes.
You're saved by grace. You just say the prayer. It doesn't matter what you do. It's what gets, I can't tell you how many evangelicals I saw posting about scandalous grace, that Jeffrey Dahmer was in heaven now because he prayed the prayer, but like condemn queer people just for existing. But it's like, oh, I don't need to be a good person, because that's not what my eternal life is based on. It's based on whether or not I said a prayer. So it just like takes the responsibility off. Not to mention, if you believe in the rapture, you're not going to take care of the planet, because who cares? Jesus is going to come back and destroy it all.
I really love what you're saying though here, Brian. And I think it resonates greatly with me. Because I think a lot of times we do get into a situation where we say, they talking about, whatever we came from or are a part of, they did this, they did that, they still do this, they still do that. But there's something about becoming part of the change and owning parts of that as well, and saying, we did this, we did that. I think that's a really great challenge. And I appreciate that perspective, because I think sometimes we have to, I tell students all the time, own your stuff, and so it's like, when we make a mistake or we come up short, I think culture would be better if we were to own our shortcomings. And I think those of us who still consider ourselves to be followers of Jesus or Christians, whatever vernacular we choose to use in the culture right now, it is important that we own it, and that we're repentant and remorseful of it, and that we're seeking to see change.
Yeah. And the way you just described it, Jeremy, that feels to me like what grace is appropriately about. It's not about the people who say, "Oh, I'm forgiven, I'm going to heaven," but it's the people who say, "Yeah, I'm owning my stuff. And I think I'm better off for owning it and admitting it than I am denying it or blaming somebody else for it."
All right, let's hit a quick mid-roll break, and we'll come back and talk more with Brian McLaren and where is the church going to go now? So let's talk about it from here as Evangelicalish continues.
Do you want more of Evangelicalish? Go to our website, evangelicalish.com, and join our Ish community for bonus episodes and private Zoom hangouts where we expand on the topics we cover in the show. Levels start at just $5 a month. And we absolutely love the community that we've built here so far and are so appreciative of all the love and support. And now, back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
All right. I like our new stuff.
My countryside came out a little bit when I was making these tracks. So full transparency, I decided instead of just grabbing like royalty-free audios and dumping them in, I was like, I'm going to make our own stuff. Like, I think that would just be cool to kind of have our own music. And so I listened back to it and I was like, oh man, this is very Southern.
So that was you playing that?
Yeah. I did that for all of our stuff this time around, just because I wanted us to have something uniquely ours. So I thought that was important.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Brian McLaren is with us. He has a new book out called Do I Stay Christian? You said something big earlier. I don't know if we gave enough attention to it, that you think the worst that Christianity can do may be in front of us and maybe not so far in front of us. What could that look like? And I guess as we're talking about we versus us, I know Jesus was pretty harsh on his own religion when he saw it going bad, and even pointed at the temple, said not a stone's going to stand on that, not one stone on another, and never said, pray that doesn't happen. And I sort of feel like we're in that season now that our religion may be doomed, or at least headed for a little bit of an overturn. Where do you see us going here?
Yeah, I always am hesitant to talk about that, because if I say something positive, it allows people to say, oh, good, we can return to our previously scheduled complacency. And if I say something negative, they say, yeah, it's hopeless, we can return to our. So here's what I honestly feel. I think in the next couple of decades, we will see uglier forms of Christianity than we have seen in a very, very long time, if ever. I think we're seeing them already, but I think we'll see them in more and more places. And I think we will see maybe some of the most beautiful forms of Christianity we've seen in a very, very long time too.
So my question with that would be, you say some of the ugliest Christianity we've ever seen. I've had that same fear or thought. My question would be, and not even pushback, so don't hear it as any kind of pushback. I just am curious, because I think I try to reconcile that thought with the idea of slavery, or with the idea of the Crusades, or some of these things that Christianity has really done throughout the course of history that has been detrimental to hundreds of thousands of lives. I guess, I hate to ask the doomsday question. Do you believe that it could be that dangerous to that level? But because we are talking about grave, dark history.
Yeah. Well, is there any country on earth right now with as many evangelical Christians holding as much power and wealth as the United States right now? And is there any country on earth right now with as many people believing conspiracy theories and creating an absolutist us-them kind of mentality? So it's not hard to imagine that the conditions for creating that kind of ugliness and evil could certainly be here. It's not only here. There's versions of this in Brazil, and versions of it in Poland, and versions of it in Italy, and so on. But let me give two scenarios that I don't share these as predictions, please, but I share them as sort of cautionary tales. So, we just passed the 20th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, a couple years ago. A good friend of mine was a seminary president, and he got invited to a gathering shortly after September 11th, 2001. I think it was early December 2001. And a major televangelist was at this gathering of seminary presidents and others. And a lot of people would know his name. And he said, the time has come. It's either us or the Muslims. And my friend said he was basically issuing a call to arms for World War III, including nuclear weapons, right? Not too long after that, a guy, he's died. I won't mention his name, but he wrote an article. He had me on his radio show. He had a radio talk show. And he said, he introduced me as someone who is friends with Al-Qaeda because I criticized the war in Iraq.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And on the show, he was very insulting on the show, but he wrote an article where he basically said that people like me were sympathizers with Al-Qaeda and so on. And what he wanted me to say is that we should have gone to war with Iran. So this idea of Christians with an itchy trigger finger or a finger to press a nuclear button, it's not that. In fact, there's a whole bunch of them whose Bible prophecy says that's how the world is supposed to end. So they're not uncomfortable with that. That's one scenario. Here's another scenario. I was with the former president, or whatever his name is, of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change some years ago. Here's what he said to me. He said, if we're going to deal with climate change, he said, the United States is, if the United States doesn't sign on, we lose 30% of our efficacy around the world. And then he said, and by the way, this was several years ago, and so it might not be exactly 30% now, but we punch above our weight in pollution, and in producing greenhouse gases. And when you look at our history, even more, you add it up over history. He said, but the United States won't be able to do what it needs to do about climate change as long as the Republicans are in control. And the Republicans, whenever they're in control of Congress or the presidency, they won't do it until evangelicals will support it. He said, so for me as a scientist, evangelical Christians in America hold the future of civilization and the future of the earth hostage. This is what he said to me. And there's a lot of truth to it. So even by slowing down action on climate change or stopping it altogether, Christians in America, evangelical and conservative Catholic Christians in America, could have something, if there are still history books being written, that the history books will write about in 500 years. Yeah.
And we believe not only that the earth is supposed to be finite, we want it to be finite so that we can go to heaven. Scary.
Yes. I love what you were saying there, because it's such a good analogy. It's a bunch of people with this, the world ending and these explosions and mass chaos. and they believe that they have longed for it almost, and they're the ones with the money, the power, and they're I think my favorite phrase when you said, itchy fingers on the trigger, I think my favorite phrase when it comes to that is, itchy booger hooks on the bang bang switch. And so
that's Southern, man. That's
yeah,
Southern.
That's an Oklahoman saying. Right?
it's probably Arkansas, but we won't get too far into that. But that's exactly right, and I love, I don't love that, but I appreciate how you are laying that out, because I think it's imperative for people to understand the stakes at this point, like the things that are really actually in play, because I think it'd be really, really easy. And that's part of the reason I wanted to toss you that question. It would be really easy to go, yeah, Christianity's been terrible, but at least we're making strides toward, progressing towards inclusion and better faith. But there are a lot of people with a lot of power, and they are blindly affiliated to radical Christianity. And, they are American ISIS in the making, in a sense. And that's, I think that's the piece that a lot of us don't comprehend. So I appreciate your perspective on that.
And Jeremy, that makes a lot of people say, I just want to get the heck out of this religion and get as far away from it as they can. But I'll tell you what my Jewish and Muslim and Buddhist, Hindu and atheist friends might say. They might say, please don't, please stay in, please don't leave your religion to those other people. You have a much better chance of getting through to them than we do. So please,
Yes.
Please.
Brian, I tried, man. I tried.
Yeah. Well, believe me. And when people try and they get escorted from the premises, I understand. And I'm not laying a moral burden on anybody there, but I'm just saying that those of us who can, let me say it this way. If we're going to stay Christian, we better not stay quiet.
There it is.
Good.
Wow.
Well,
and that's the thing, is that I can see these deconstructed, new, beautiful, inclusive Christian communities, like having youth groups where basically now they're challenging, like, you never know when you're walking down the hallway that 3 out of 4 of your friends may be going to the evangelical heaven. We have to reach them.
Oh my goodness.
It feels
Can I say something about that, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Like, when you think about that, because that's how I grew up, right? That's how I grew up. When you think about that, I want to go to a place where I'll have absolute bliss for eternity, while all the people I currently love are experiencing eternal conscious torment. What a day that will be.
What a day.
But God will wipe away every tear. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
Well, I just know that I can only imagine what heaven will be like.
Well, I keep thinking if eternity is spending heaven with the people who comment on my social media, I have zero desire.
Yeah.
That's not the selling point you think it is.
No, that's the funniest thing, is like, as Brian is sharing that with us, I'm seeing like almost this reverse, ministry work, this proselytization of like, don't follow the evangelicals into eternity, or whatever. Like,
oh my God. Did y'all ever watch Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames?
Oh God, yes.
The play.
I heard about it, but
there were these like traveling evangelical play, and it would like follow different like groups of people, and they would all die suddenly. Some would go to heaven, some would go to hell. It was like the judgment scene. But I remember there was one girl, she was in a car wreck with her entire family. Like, I'm traumatized by this, so I remember.
Yes.
She was in a car accident with her entire family. Everybody dies. Her parents and like, I don't know, some sibling all went to hell because she was the only one that was going to church. She was like, she was timid. She hadn't invited them to church. She didn't want to, she was just, too shy, whatever.
She was too shy.
So she's like crying because she sees her family going to hell, but she gets to go to heaven because she prayed the prayer. And then Jesus like, whew, like floats down on the staircase, and you see him like wipe her tear away. And then literally it's like turns into a party. Oh. And I remember like I was probably 10. And even then I was like, There's no way a magic wipe would like make me not care that my family was just burning. It was like graphic too. The demons, it was like blood, and it was traumatizing.
Magic wipe.
Oh my
Can't
gosh,
stop burning.
I was asking all of my friends on social media, if I told my kids I was going to set them on fire if they didn't
Yes.
worship me correctly or do what I told them to do, would I be a good father? Can that God be a good father? And nobody would answer that question. They have they'll throw up a Bible verse. God is good all the time,
No, they would just say, "Oh, his ways are above. We only understand finite love. We can't understand how burning alive is actually love."
Or they would say he's God. He gets to do whatever he wants to do. And I say, okay, yes, he can be a sovereign God. There can be this omnipotent, omniscient, sovereign God. But if he threatens us with setting us on fire for eternity, and even worse, if he creates us knowing we're going to be burning for eternity, that's not a good being. It could exist, but not be good.
How abusive is a relationship like that? Like, think about it, like you're saying, Paul, in earthly terms, like how abusive is it? Like, you're going to do all these things I ask you to do, or I'm going to kick you out of the house. Like, I'm going to burn you. I'm going to scold you. I'm going to whatever. And it's like, that's not real love. See, real love happens by choice. And I think that a relationship with Jesus is very relational. We choose it. And it's this deep and intimate thing, but this deal of like being forced into stuff. It's almost like the evangelical God doesn't believe in consent, and so it's challenging in that sense, that those were things that I certainly, I would speak for myself. I certainly believed, and I would even talk about, some of those talking points, like we can't define God's love. Like God's love is higher than our ways and all of those things, but you can't draw it out to any kind of logical conclusion where that love is love that is actual, real, honest to goodness, unadulterated love.
When you're talking about hell, it's funny. I think I've been a pastor for, 10 or 15 years. And I was preaching through, I think, the book of Exodus. And I realized that I preached through Genesis and I was preaching through Exodus. And I realized hell has never shown up so far in the Bible. And
yeah,
it's so weird that I never would have noticed that. And then I did a little research and found out that apart from the King James Bible, which mistranslates the Hebrew word Sheol as hell.
Yes.
Nobody in the Hebrew scriptures believed in hell. And this was an idea that never even entered Jewish thought until maybe about 100 years or so before Christ. And when Jesus shows up, it's not that all Jews believe in hell. In fact, the conservatives, the Sadducees, didn't believe in hell. And the more liberal or syncretistic Pharisees did believe in hell. And as soon as I saw that, it just like made so much sense to me. Suddenly, everything Jesus does is not reinforcing the age-old belief in hell. He's kind of like blowing up the whole argument by showing how absurd it is. And if you go back and read some of the parables where Jesus talks about hell, suddenly you realize, how could we ever think that he was telling us to believe this? He's not teaching hell. He's unteaching hell. He's undoing what people have thought. But hell was a super useful idea in Christian history because, as you say, Jeremy, that when you have this image that this is what God is like, God eternally tortures people, then in a certain sense, that gives us permission to go in that direction too.
It's good for business, right? Like in a sense, like it is a way to manipulate and control the conversation, because when it's unstable or unsure, or we've got to bring logic and reason and even good contextual, like what you're talking about when you're studying the scriptures, good historical and cultural and political context of the time, when those conversations come up and people are bringing up good literary points to bring up good historical points and all of that, it's a really great trump card to hold in your sleeve to then be able to, well, but you don't want to burn forever in eternity, do you?
Yeah.
Like, and so I think that is really interesting. The other thing I would say is that I have been rereading the parables of Jesus, because I am actually shocked at how often I think I find Jesus using sarcasm or wit inside of his teachings or inside of his parables to challenge people and their thought processes. And so it's really fascinating when the character and the person of Jesus begins to develop into a way that's not so very like literal and, with a tie.
So the book, Do I Stay Christian? I love your line. If we're going to stay Christian, we can't stay quiet. It seems a little bit like your conclusion of the book is in your statement of what maybe the question isn't, do we stay Christian? The question is, what kind of human being do we want to be? Is that kind of where you are? And I guess to add to that, because a lot of people are missing church. I'm seeing that they miss the community. So is that the answer? We have to just reevaluate who we are as human beings in the middle of it all?
Yeah, I think we're in this really messy period. I don't think there's a simple answer for everybody. I mean, people would be surprised how many communities there are that are pushing through this, my gosh, there are white supremacist Christians, and there are anti-racist Christians, and there are Christians who are saying drill baby drill, and there are Christians who are laying down their lives to try to protect the earth. So opposite things exist in this religion. And one of the joys of my life in the last 15 years or so has been being involved a lot more in interfaith work. And then you find out, oh, the same thing is happening in Islam. The same thing's happening in Judaism. Same thing's happening in Buddhism. And you realize, so what I want to do is, if I'm going to stay Christian, I want to find every resource to be a good human in my Christian faith. And I want to maximize that. And I don't feel that as long as my Buddhist friends are happy to share some of their good ideas, and my Jewish friends and my Hindu friends and so on, I'm open to good ideas from anybody. But it's a whole different ballgame when, instead of seeing people of other religions as your competitors, you see that, or instead of saying my religion's wrong, yours is right, I'll just join yours, to say, hey, look, in all of our religions, we're in this very rough patch of human history, and we've all got some work to do, and let's roll up our sleeves and get in there and find everybody moving in anything close to the right direction and encourage them.
That's great.
Good stuff. Well, let's hit one more mid-roll here, and then we'll go to our final fun segment. How about that? As we wrap it up with Brian McLaren. I hit the wrong one. Sorry. Stop. Oh, I downloaded the one.
Do you want more of Evangelicalish? Go to our website, evangelicalish.com, and join our Ish community for bonus episodes and private Zoom hangouts where we expand on the topics we cover in the show. Levels start at just $5 a month, and we absolutely love the community that we've built here so far and are so appreciative of all the love and support. And now, back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
Sorry about that, Jeremy. I downloaded the wrong mid-roll.
No, you're good. You're good. I just, all I could hear on that is Chris Stapleton. I just need Chris Stapleton to pick up this song and sing on it. So that's it. That would be
all
fantastic.
right. So we have our fun question to finish with. And I don't know, was this yours, April? Did you come up with this, or?
I think we were talking about someone was talking about it. I don't know. And then we were like, yeah, we did believe some weird things. And then
Yeah, I think it was just collective out of our meeting the other day. It was a fun little thought that we would share this.
So what the question is, what did I believe back in my evangelical days that I can't believe I ever believed? Who wants to jump in first on this one?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I don't remember exactly where I learned this. I just believed it. So it was enough in the culture that it was. And then I made a TikTok about it one time because I was talking to Beecher, and Beecher believed it too. So I believed that when I died on my judgment day, before I was allowed to go into heaven or hell or whatever, even if I was a Christian, that I would have to watch back my entire life on a screen in front of my loved ones and angels and God, like my entire life, to the point that like Beecher believed it so much they would like wink at the walls, imagining like a heavenly camera there, like Jim from The Office, like for their
he
future
broke
self.
down the fourth wall.
Like
Yeah,
Jim
but like,
from The
hey.
Office.
Yeah, and like it would affect me as a child to where I was like, oh shoot, I'm alone. Oh wait, but grandma's watching,
so
or
good.
will be one day. And like occasionally I would have the thought in the shower, and I didn't know if heaven would have censor bars, but I would like try to not be naked, you know, just in case to rewatch it later. I was like, wasn't sure how that was gonna work out.
Oh no.
But then I did research on it because I wanted to figure out where this came from. And y'all remember Chick Tracks?
Oh God, yeah.
So there is a Chick tract, and there's you can still buy them, but that was called This Was Your Life. And the whole comic is this concept where you go to heaven and you watch your life on a movie screen. And then Amy Grant actually has a line in one of her songs that talks about this too. So I don't know who came up with this, but it infiltrated and I believed it.
Wow.
Yeah. When I was becoming older, that's the way I'm going to say that. When I was becoming older, I worried about the omnipresence of God a lot, like just where he was and what he was watching me do. So,
yeah. Or that grandma, could see me from heaven, But by the way, I said he for Beecher there. I'm really sorry. They Beecher. They broke down the fourth wall. Sorry about that. I think I'm going to do that from now on. I'm going to start doing the office and look at the heavenly camera with my perplexed look.
If it happens, I'm probably going to hell, but like at least my video will be like dope from the time I'm 34 on. So that's a good idea.
That is classic. Jeremy, tell us yours.
So mine's a little bit more serious than April, and now I'm regretting that. But I actually held a really toxic belief, and I'm having to kind of just kind of process through that, and obviously live in a lot of repentance and for that. But when I was younger, I believed that that the LGBTQIA rights movement was racist. And the reason that I believed it was racist is because I believed that people who, as we all did at a time, right? We believed that, or we were taught and indoctrinated and I believed that people chose their sexuality versus that they were created with their sexuality. I believe that people chose their sexuality. And because of that, I believe that the fight for equal rights for the LGBTQIA plus community was degrading of the civil rights movement. And so not sure where I really picked that up. I was kind of in a weird middle ground space because I was a lot more progressive than a lot of the people around me and my friends, because my friend group was very diverse and I grew up in a very diverse school. So I had a different opinion about like racial reconciliation and stuff, which was probably way more progressive. But my beliefs on LGBTQIA plus things and sexuality was very, very conservative and problematic. And so, I just remember saying some very harmful and hurtful things to my friends that were a part of that community or adjacent to that community about how, they should be ashamed, and that the civil rights fight was for real rights and things like that. And so you got to own your shit, right? Like we talked about that earlier. You got to own your stuff. And so I got to own my stuff.
Your household was not so different than ours, though, because the women's lib movement was evil. John Lennon singing Imagine was evil. Alan Alda was evil for standing for women. All of that. When Muhammad Ali died and my dad was telling me what a great man Ali was, I was just looking at him going, I know exactly what you said about Muhammad Ali in our house, and it wasn't kind, and it would be considered extremely racist today. So it's kind
of at least
funny.
He said something nice about him when he died, and wasn't one of those Christians that was like, you got to get saved because he's in hell, because I saw those as well. So what is it like anytime a celebrity dies, they're like, hope she was saved, like that's their like rest in peace. Blech. Oh, Paul, before we move on,
Thoughts and prayers.
We got it from Ginny.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah,
she texted us that her husband thought
this is where we got the topic from.
Yeah, because she had to explain to her 42-year-old husband that women do not have one more rib than men because of the Adam and Eve story. I know other people that think that too.
I had somebody share that with me the other day, and I said, no, I know that's not true because Ginny told me it was not true. I'll go ahead, and then Brian will let you finish it up for us. I can't believe that I used to believe that we had to cut skin off the end of a boy's penis for him to be Christian. Do Christians think being uncircumcised is bad? Yeah, and you read the New Testament, and wasn't this exactly what Paul was preaching against? That you don't have to be circumcised to be a Christian? But I certainly grew up believing a non-circumcised penis was a non-Christian penis.
I just want to know, like in Acts 15, when they're having this debate, how did they know the Gentiles weren't circumcised? Who was the first one that's like, that looks different?
Yeah. What is that?
Well, my rabbi friend told me, he's like, Paul was a really good marketing guy. And he said, hey, this adult circumcision is a problem, getting people into the religion. So we got to find a way around that thing.
Oh, God.
Because, it's all grace. Just get saved and cut the skin off your penis and you're good.
It's extra. You don't need it.
Isn't that one of those great old Hebrew scripture that we call the Old Testament, where they made everybody get circumcised, and then while they were recovering, they went in and killed them all. I love that story.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Brian,
we
yours?
are learning a lot about each other tonight. Anyway, go ahead.
It's very hard to say anything after something about penises, but
penises.
So all the things I thought of, when I'm really honest with myself, when I heard them, I didn't actually believe them. I just understood I was supposed to believe them. Like one of them was, I remember hearing a sermon that in the Garden of Eden was perfect so that people would eat, but they never had to go to the bathroom because that would have defiled the Garden of Eden. And that when we have our perfect glorified bodies in heaven, we will have a feast, but we will never have to go to the bathroom. So I remember hearing that and just thinking, that makes no sense at all, so, but here's the thing though, that I did believe. I believed I had to play the game, that I had to, that, you know what I mean? Just the game of Bible verse versus Bible verse, even though I gave myself permission to not believe this or this or this, I believed I had to play the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did Adam and Eve not have any relief system?
I guess we have to blame Eve for poop now too.
Oh my.
Well, no, I mean, listen, it is 2023. We'll say that Adam had something to do with the poos.
You know what
okay?
I find
Well,
most
because her sin didn't even matter, right? Women didn't matter. So it was when
but
Adam.
they blame her though. They
Yeah.
blame Eve.
They blame her for tempting him. Yes.
It's always the woman's fault.
Yeah, it's always the woman's fault. I find that really fascinating because especially like, these folks like thought that they were just supposed to procreate like bunny rabbits. And, I got 4 kids at home. Some of the most glorious times of my day, are the times when I can get away to the restroom for a few minutes. And so like, if that's true, I don't know if I like the world before the fall. Like Dad needs a few minutes, some stinker tinker time. In other words,
gosh.
like I need to, I want to scroll through Facebook unabated, like, so just saying, listen, my wife works nights and stuff like that. So I kind of hold up some of the end on that. And, yeah, I think that's a very important part of life. So I'm just saying, if that was part of the Garden of Eden, then it's not as glorious as they made it to sound. Okay.
I do like to ask people from time to time, do you think Jesus passed gas?
He was fully human. I want to know if he
but he's
when
also fully God.
breastfeeding and he grew teeth, did he bite Mary? I'm sure he did. I got bit by both my children. It hurts.
Well, the song says in the crib, no crying he makes, which even as a kid, I thought, how could that possibly be true? I think the other interesting, belief on a more serious note that comes out of the Garden of Eden story that I hear a lot from people is, well, Satan got Eve to start asking questions, and that's when things went wrong. Asking questions is bad. Asking questions is bad. You shouldn't think.
Oh,
The
I know.
immaculate flatulation.
I find it so fascinating. I went and had lunch with some friends, and 2 were atheists. It was like me, Beecher, and another Christian guy. And the one guy is from Finland, and he did not grow up religious at all, at all. And so he was just absolutely mortified by the stories that we were telling. And I was just like, I cannot even imagine having a childhood where I didn't think at any moment a trumpet would sound and I was going to get sucked up into the sky naked.
Yeah.
What was that like?
But clothes folded.
Yeah, neatly folded behind.
Yeah. Not in a pile. You just, it's so good.
Right. God can bring us all up into heaven, but draws the line at earthly clothes. That doesn't make it.
Just remember, April, that idea of the rapture that you were terrorized by came from my denomination that I grew up in.
Thank you. Much.
You're welcome.
This is not a belief, but it is something that you talk about, like those cultural differences or whatever, and things that we had inside of evangelical culture growing up. I remember I had a friend move here from Nigeria in high school, and he started going to church with us. And when people pray, a lot of times they make these random sounds with their face. We'll be like, dear Jesus, just, like that sucking sound or whatever. And he was like, so he asked me one day, he goes, what does mean? And I was like, what? And he goes, what does mean? And I was like, I don't know. I said, why? And he goes, it seems like it's something you say to your God. The only time he ever heard it was in prayer. Yeah. And so I was like, man, that is weird. Why do we do stuff like that?
We also throw in a lot of Father Gods and just
Father God,
just.
He asked why we addressed God so many times. He goes, did he forget you were talking to him? Did you forget you were talking to him? I thought those were really great questions. Those have stuck with me for 20 years.
It's because we're trying to think of what to say to impress the people around us.
Yeah.
It sounds somewhat spiritual.
Yeah, or quote tons of scripture inside of a prayer, just to flex on people.
Mm-hmm.
It's why in the Vineyard Association of Churches, which I was ordained in, it was a requirement that you preach in a Hawaiian shirt, because John Wimber always wore a lot of Hawaiian shirts. So soon Every vineyard pastor was wearing Hawaiian shirts. By the way, my family believed that if you got, if you were cremated, you couldn't go in the rapture.
Yes.
Because how could God possibly reform your body if you weren't
dead
in
and cast shall rise?
Yeah.
The bones will come out of the grave. How can the bones come out of the grave if you're just a bunch of ash?
Yeah.
And we don't even know if it's Aunt Ethel's ash. Like it could have been like the last 4 people they used that place for.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good stuff.
so weird.
The book is Do I Stay Christian? Where do people find you, Brian?
BrianMcLaren.net. They can find, all the stuff that I'm up to. And there's my links to Twitter and so on. I'm not on TikTok. But I'm, you three are are my TikTok heroes. So.
Oh,
Wow.
I could just faint.
All right. Time for the rapture. That's all I needed.
We have accomplished what we came to accomplish.
Brian, your people developed the rapture and you brought the rapture to us, brother. We appreciate it.
Still bringing the word.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, thank you for being with us. It has really been an honor to chat with you tonight.
Absolutely.
It's been my pleasure. And keep up the good work. And thanks for having me. And really been a pleasure.
Yeah. Everyone go get this book.
Yes, go get the book.
Do I Stay Christian by Brian McLaren.
Is just out of curiosity, is there an audio book?
Yeah.
Did you read it?
Yeah.
Yes, let's go. Those are the best ones.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I had fun doing that.
Great stuff.
Awesome.
All right, Jeremy, take us home.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to thank Brian again for coming on this evening. It has been an absolutely delightful conversation, a challenging conversation, and we appreciate his perspective. Go get the book. For those of you who have not joined the Ish community, go to evangelicalish.com. That's evangelical with an ISH at the end. You can join the Ish community for as little as $5. You can join for, there's several different tiers there that you can be a part of, and we would love for you to come join the community. There's private episodes that everyone gets access to, and then for the top couple of tiers, you get access to a Zoom that happens about once every 2 months. And so you can come and join and be a part of that. We'll be back next week. And we're excited about that. Glad to be back on the grind and moving ahead in season 47 or season 3, depends on how you count. But otherwise, for Brian and April and Paul, I'm Jeremy. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Y'all have a good night. We love you.